Good evening. My name is Bill Golden. I'm the director and co-founder of Real Pirates Salem, which is a museum, an attraction, and experience. If you haven't been through the museum yet, please take the time at the end of this presentation and go through. We'd be happy to act as docents to lead that tour through after you've had a little something to eat and drink here, and show you what we have here. But you're about to embark on an extraordinary voyage. We have the only verified pirate treasure in the world in this building. There are two places you can see it. You can see it here or at the Museum in the Cape that is curated by Barry Clifford, the world-renowned underwater explorer that found the treasure from a pirate ship that was wrecked off Cape Cod in 1717. Barry's going to be our first presenter. He's out there giving an interview to Channel 5 right now, but he'll be in shortly. But let me tell you a little bit of what we have in the museum. So we have the story of real pirates, and this is a pirate by the name of Black Sam Bellamy and his crew of 180 pirates. And Black Sam Bellamy was very unusual. Black Sam Bellamy, at the age of 28, after only 1 year of piracy, taking 54 vessels and no record of hurting anyone at any time, on the Forbes list of all-time high-earning pirates, and who knew they had one, but they do, #1, the richest, most successful pirate of all times. He was a pirate for only 1 year. And what we explore here is the life and death of his crew through hundreds of artifacts. From the cannons you will see, to the firearms you will see, to dinner plates and spoons and jewelry that they wore, and the navigational tools that they used to navigate through the Caribbean and up the coast. Then you will see real treasure. These are 500 coins that were underwater for 300 years. Some of those coins were already 200 years old when they went to the bottom of the sea. They were recovered by Barry, who now has 200,000 artifacts from this wreck over the last 40 years, of which thousands and thousands and thousands of coins, gold and silver coins, bullion this big. But Barry Clifford has never sold a single artifact or a single coin, because what he would say is the real treasure in life is not the gold and silver. We all know it helps, right? But it's not the objective. So when he's gone out over these 40 years and recovered all these artifacts and never sold any of them, his purpose was to share all of that treasure with you. We all have a dream or a goal in life. Barry's dream was to find this pirate ship. It's taken him 40 years. He's only got 15% of the treasure. He's going to be doing it for another 40 years maybe. But we all have those goals. And isn't really the goal in our life, shouldn't it be, not the gold and silver, but following that dream, working hard to achieve it, and then when you do, not just enjoying it for yourself. You know, I know a lot of people in this room are parents. You know, once we were fancy-free and single and having fun all the time with no obligations, but many of us chose to go back and share what we learned and what we had from our parents and what we had found, the treasure of life, and share it with our children. And maybe that's what we're trying to do. We want you to go through here and learn about real pirates. Now, pirates don't have such a good name, do they? You know, we use words as kids to perhaps embarrass each other or to say you know, things that would hurt somebody's feelings. But nations are very different. Nations use words to dehumanize people, and to justify, through that dehumanization, doing terrible things to them. Now, in the 1600s, that word was witch. If you want to learn anything more of that, you should meet Biff Michaud here and go to Real Pirates Salem and learn the real story, the historic story about
Salem Witch Museum.
Did I say Real Pirates? I meant Biff is not hesitating. The Salem Witch Museum, and I'm a particular fan of this museum because, by the way, I am the great grandchild of Rebecca Nurse, who was hanged here in 1692. And so Salem has always been very important to me, and there's no place you can learn that better than Salem Witch Museum. But in the 1600s, that word was witch. In the 1700s, that word was pirate. And as we take you back into the 1700s, through all these artifacts, we ask you to kind of open your mind and think about people not in stereotypic ways, but as human beings, and what motivates us all as human beings. You know, today we live in a society where blue can't talk to red, red can't talk to blue, nobody talks to purple, and nobody listens, right? Maybe by going back in history, we can remove those tribal barriers and think a little bit more of ourselves as a community. So when we talk about pirates, why did they become pirates? Well, being an individual, a commoner in the 1700s was very difficult. Life was brutish, mean, and very short. These people had no education. They owned no property. They had no means of employment. There were no soup kitchens, no shelters. There were no social security, no safety net. They were on their own. And they were often abused and used by their government. Black Sam Bellamy had been in the War of the Spanish Succession for 10 years, in which life expectancy in the British Navy was 1 out of 5 every year. He survived. But what did England do at that point? They took these people, often who they'd been knocked over the head or somehow brought to the ships unwillingly. They took these people and put 30,000 of them on the docks in 2 months with no means of getting the next meal or anything. Bellamy finds his way to the Americas. He's sitting, you can't make this stuff up. He's sitting in a tavern, and a guy named Palsgrave Williams walks in. He says, "I'm the son of the Attorney General of Rhode Island. And I want to take you, and I want to go down to Florida, and we're going to pick up gold and silver off the beaches like shells." Why did he say that? Because in the War of Spanish Succession, Spain had not sent any of its silver over from the New World. And this, what they were stealing from the New World really was so important that by the end, they were bankrupt. They had to get this hoard of silver over. So they formed probably the greatest treasure fleet ever in the Western Hemisphere out of Havana, Cuba, with 11 huge galleons. It went around Florida, was hit by a hurricane, and every single one of those galleons went down. It was gold fever up and down the coast of the colonies, and people went down there to legitimately salvage it. And they got down there, the Spanish Army and Navy was there, said not so fast. And so Bellamy was faced with a choice. This was 1716, and what Bellamy did is say, "I am no longer British. England has broken its basic covenant and its trust with me as a human being by not treating me like a human being, not treating me as having any value whatsoever except how they could use me." Now, 60 years later, there's a guy named John Hancock. He said the same thing. "I'm no longer British. The government has broken their trust with us." Now, Hancock's beef was over taxes. Bellamy's was over existence. But it didn't stop there, because then Hancock said, "I'm going to form my own nation." Bellamy says, "I'm going to form my own nation." But what was the difference when he signed the Articles of the Pirate Code from his nation and our nation 60 years later? In Bellamy's nation, a third of his crew were escaped slaves from Africa. More were Native Americans that escaped the death mines, the conquistadors, where they were working these people to death. And then, very significantly, people from all over Europe that had been fighting each other for hundreds of years in the name of this monarch or that king. They all came together in a single society where everyone had equal value, in that they got an equal share of their nation's wealth. Everybody had an equal vote. Anybody could be captain. They even had a disability insurance program in 1716 where if you were injured, you would be put ashore and given enough money to survive. Those were the pirates. Those are the bad guys, right? Let's go revisit the good guys in the 1700s. England, Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, and France. What were they? They were the pinnacles of culture, of art, of their legal structure. They were hugely successful economically. But what were they doing? They were invading every country on the face of the earth they could, robbing everything they had, killing literally millions of people, enslaving the population and destroying their culture. And to do it in the Americas, they had to do something very special. They had to kidnap and enslave 4 million people from Africa and bring them to the Americas so that their colonial economics would work and they could get sugar and tobacco and molasses and rum over to the markets in Europe. Industrial slavery at a level never done before or since. Egalitarian democracy, the pirates, never before or really since. People say, well, the pirates attacked ships and stole stuff. As soon as you became a pirate, every nation on earth declared war against you. And if you were at war, if you were Spain and you were England, you were France, they issued these letters of marque and people would go out and they would attack your merchant fleet. If necessary, kill everybody on board, take everything on board, and that was perfectly legal. But for the pirates, they were beyond the realm of humanity. Why did they hate the pirates? Why did they want to dehumanize them and eliminate them? Some of them were psychopaths, some of them were very bad people. But name me a good slave trader, right? This ship had been built as a slave boat by a guy that was a senior member of society in England, senior member of Parliament. He was on the board of the Bank of England. His brother was president of the Bank of England. These ships were insured by Lloyd's of London. They were protected by the muscle of the crown. And every time this person walked into the fancy drawing rooms of London at the time, he was greeted as this wonderful, successful businessman, the pinnacle of their society. And what was his business? Buying and selling human beings. So if the pirates were doing no more than these other nations, just the rules of engagement, fighting and taking other ships, why were they so feared by the powers that be? Every one of those powers was either a monarchy or some kind of autocratic government. One person was God in that, often with divine lineage, right? And they controlled the country. On every ship of every flag of every European nation, there was one person that was also God, the captain. For the merest infraction, they could inflict mortal punishment. They told you every second of the day what you did, every whatever little water you could drink or food you could eat. And sometimes if you worked for the merchant ships, they'd work you to death for 6 months, put you on the dock, and people would say, where's my pay? And they'd say, sue me, get out of here. So when pirates could elect a captain, and then, if it wasn't in a storm or battle, overrule that captain on a single decision, this was dangerous. This had to be eliminated. And that's one reason why pirate became the word. So as we go through this journey, we ask you to, open your minds, think about people as people and not as stereotypes or as names. We ask you to think about that not only in that era, but as the Salem Witch Museum does, which is think about what's happening today, maybe how we could live a little better. And when you think about your goals in life, that it's not always gold and silver. As Barry Clifford says, the real treasure is really what we pass on to each other to make life better for all of us. So that's what this is all about. We're really privileged. I met Barry 23 years ago, I think. My wife, Kristen, and I own a lightship, a floating lighthouse, and we were looking for dockage in Provincetown. And I think Barry was under the dock trying to fix a line or a pipe or something, because he never stops. The other day I called Barry, and we were talking about a really important, business decision, millions of dollars. And Barry's on the phone for 3 minutes, said, Bill, I'm sorry, I'll call you right back. Boom. I wait 15 minutes. I wait a half an hour. I wait 45 minutes. Finally, I called, and his wife answered. I said, Margot, where the hell is Barry? And she said, well, the wind came up, and it came from a certain direction. Oh, I said, are the boats in danger? What's going on down there? She said, no. She said, there's a beach way at the tip of the Cape. And in the early 1900s, people used to sunbathe there. And when the wind comes up from a certain direction, it blows the sand away, and there are pennies there. And Barry goes out to hunt for this is millions of dollars we're talking about. Barry goes out to hunt for the pennies so he can give them to his wife. So that is the essence of world-famous explorer Barry Clifford, who has found the Santa Maria in Haiti, the adventure, Captain Kidd's adventure in Madagascar, and for all of you to see. He's found the widow and all the artifacts of the widow. So my friend, my mentor, Barry Clifford. So can I just talk about the whole
Well, thank you very much, Bill. What a beautiful, it's done a great job here. It really tells the story very accurately of these pirates who were experimenting in democracy with former slaves. And to me, that's the treasure of the widow, is that, 50 years before George Washington, began experimenting in democracy on board a former slave ship that was captured by pirates. They were experimenting in democracy with escaped slaves. And I didn't read about that when I was a kid in school. I never saw any Errol Flynn movies with any black pirates. It was all covered up by ethnocentric historians and by plantation owners. The last thing plantation owners would want was for slaves to realize that if they could escape and join the pirates, they would be free. So this was all covered up very neatly, just the way history is written by the winners to their advantage. And subsequently, the story of the widow, where Africans were experimenting on board a former slave ship in democracy, to me was the treasure that I discovered, not understanding this before I went to look for the ship. I first heard about the widow growing up as a boy in Brewster, sitting around the old fishing shacks with my uncles, who were all true American. They were all World War II and World War I guys that would sit around the fish shack in Brewster, where I lived, and tell stories. And I was always listening with my cousins. And the one story that really caught my attention was the story of the widow, which my Uncle Bill told. And my Uncle Bill was, my uncles called him Uncle Bull. So there was always this element of, what's real and what's not real. So as I was growing up, hearing the stories of the ship that had wrecked off the back of the Cape, Sam Bellamy, who was this man who came over from England, met this beautiful girl. His name was Maria Hallett. They fell in love. Bellamy left for the Caribbean to look for the Spanish treasure fleet that had wrecked in 1715. And subsequently, Maria Hallett, who had his baby, hid the baby in a barn, and the baby, a straw caught in the baby's throat, as I understand, and then died. And subsequently, they locked her in jail, and because she was able to bewitch the jailer into allowing her to walk in the cemetery, they subsequently tried her as a witch, and she was driven out of town. In the meantime, Bellamy, who went to look for the 1715 fleet, never didn't understand anything. They didn't know that Maria Hallett had been condemned as a witch, and she didn't have any idea that he had turned pirate. And 2 years later, with the cargoes of 53 ships on board the widow, it wrecked on the back of the Cape. And it's been buried there for 300 years until we found it. And the story was, I told this the other day on the TV show that I was just doing. I don't like to drop names, but I was having Thanksgiving dinner with Walter Cronkite in 1982, in the fall of '82. And after dinner, Walter said, "What have you been doing these days, Barry?" And this is after I had been involved with the Martha's Vineyard Islander that wrecked on Martha's Vineyard, and it was in the press. And I was involved, I was the salvage agent on it. And I told him the story, and I told him the story of the widow. And he said, "Barry, if I were you, I would go do that." So I called up my one employee at the time, John Kennedy Jr. Sorry to drop names. And Kennedy and I left the next day for the Cape to look for the widow. And John dove down, came up and said, "Barry, there's nothing but sand." I'd expected to see a mermaid, chests of gold, and then we realized the whole thing was buried. And subsequently, over the years, what that did is it protected the whole shipwreck, because we have this, only in this room. Am I on TV now? I can't. Well, I'm not going to tell you what we just found. You'll be reading about it in another couple of months. But everything that we've found has been buried, and it stays in this deep anaerobic tomb where there's no oxygen and everything is perfectly preserved. So as we bring these things to the surface, there's all of these things encapsulated within concretions, which Bill is doing here, and we're going to work with him on bringing concretions here where they'll be able to, expose these artifacts. Like I was just saying earlier today with Carolyn, I looked at this one concretion. I went, oh, look, there's a piece of 8, and that's probably from Potosi or Lima. She looked at it.
I looked at it 1,000 times. I never saw a coin in there.
But there's these concretions are time capsules, and they're 300 years old, and we have thousands and thousands and thousands of concretions at our lab in Brewster. One of them weighs 13,000 pounds with 7 cannons all frozen together in it. We have another concretion with the whole skeleton in the concretion. You can see his pistol. Over his hip, you can see his pelvis in the x-ray. And right over where his pocket would be, you see a pocket filled with treasure. And he's still in the concretion. We haven't taken it apart yet. It's in our laboratory in in Yarmouth. But we're going to be bringing a lot of that up here for Bill to work with our conservator, Dr. Herber. And we're delighted to be here and, in Salem with our neighbor, the Salem Witch Museum. We're so honored to have that. We go back a long way.
40 years.
40 years. So, well, thank you very much for coming, and I look forward to coming back up here again and working with you.
Any questions? Take care of getting up here. Okay.
Just had back surgery on Friday. I've known Barry. I'm Biff Michaud, CEO of the Salem Witch Museum. We're one of the most visited museums in the United States. First in Salem, third in Massachusetts. And I met with Bill and saw his enthusiasm. And I had 40 years of experience with Barry, so I knew about concretions. I've been down to his lab down there. And when Bill said that he was interested in, taking and making the booty from the ship available, but he wanted to do it in trucks and go all over the United States. I said, why do you want to do that? You should go. We can guarantee you an audience of about a million people a year. And we don't have, if you envision Salem as a triangle, you come out of the Salem Witch Museum and you go southwest to here. You come out of here and you go east to the House of Seven Gables and the ferry, and out of the House of Seven Gables to the front of the Salem Witch Museum. That golden triangle, he named it that.
I did not. You named it.
In any case, everything in Salem worth seeing is in that golden triangle. And this has the potential of being another Salem Witch Museum. And if you haven't been through, if you haven't talked to your neighbors, if you haven't talked to your families and made sure that they come to Salem and whatnot to see this, it is awesome. And it's real. And Barry is a guy that is so incredibly knowledgeable and trustworthy, and one of the most respected marine archaeologists in the world. To have him allow Bill and the crew to bring artifacts, and it's like going into a men's room. The rest of the building is full of treasure, and what they have here is akin to a small little bit of that treasure, but it will grow, and it's going to grow and make Salem even bigger than what it already is. And the quality of this exhibit and the way that it was laid out, and especially when you have kids that come here, a concretion is something that is taken from the ocean, and all the plankton and everything adheres to a gun, for instance. And over the years, it becomes like concrete, so they call it concretion. Well, Barry has X-ray machines, and they found a cannon in one. they found this and another. There's a gun over here, a rifle over there, a guy's hip over here. And I said to Bill, if you're going to do something, you should make sure that there's a conservator here that can work on a concretion, because there isn't a child that, and this is one of the most visited cities by school children in the Commonwealth. And when they come here, they can ask the conservator, what are you doing? And he'll say, well, take a look. And oh, we just found a little piece there, look at that. This is something that if we can find a child at 10 years old and appeal to their imagination, as the Salem Witch Museum, the success of the Salem Witch Museum is, we take people out of the 21st century and put them in the 17th century. We present them with the facts and allow them to be the judge. And this has that same potential. And if we can reach one more child, a 10-year-old, the way that his Uncle Bull reached Barry, and we create another Barry, this is a legacy that goes on, and it is endless. So it's a nice exhibit to see, nice museum to see, but what it represents is something that is, we haven't even scratched the surface. So spend some time and really go through what is here and understand and touch some of the things that are pieces of eight. It's the only place in the world that you can touch an actual piece of eight. Can't take it with you, but you can put your finger in the little hole. But I am very proud to be associated with the WITA and with Barry and with Bill, and I wish them all the luck, and I hope that they achieve what we've achieved. And we've had 16 million visitors to the Salem Witch Museum, and this is something that I foresee this anchor store to the southwest of that golden triangle achieving that goal. And it just takes everybody talking about it. And once you see it, you'll be stunned the way that I was. It's amazing to me. So,
Biff, thank you,
right.
thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
The father of tourism outside of Boston. We're all the way up. Barry, does anyone have a question for Barry? As Biff said, Barry is a legend. I mean, there are people out there that I can't tell you how difficult this 40 years has been. Imagine being in open ocean. Imagine, when we were out there in August, we had to put 8 anchors around the ship to keep it in one place. And we got up at 5:30 in the morning, dusted out this pit that's twice as high as this ceiling. And we lower a video device down there to the Pleistocene glacial till, and there are coins sitting there. There's a cannon sticking out that hasn't been seen for 300 years. The thrill of that, and to be able to do that. And then that pit, I'm watching it, I'm thinking, Barry, I want to go diving before the History Channel crew comes here. And then this big black cloud comes around. It's like the Thing out of a horror movie, comes around the Cape with the 4 or 5 knot channel, and it fills up this 30-foot pill with mungweed so thick you can't see your hand in front of your eye. And if that's not bad enough, look up at this creature up here. That's a 17-foot great white shark. They are out there from May through October, and Barry and his crew are diving with these guys. It is enormously dangerous. It's the myth of the hero, where you go through all this and you bring it back, and despite the danger and the risk, you look to the reward of trying to make things better for everyone. But yes, hi Kate, how you doing?
I have a question.
Well, first of all, let's acknowledge Kate Fox. Who, Kate Fox is a jewel in the crown of Salem. Head of tourism here, and she is amazing.
I just
Kate.
wanted to ask about the sand. Thank you, Bill. So, are you moving the sand to get to the wreck, or are you waiting for current changes and for Mother Nature to reveal the wreck to you? Well,
We have a deflector on the back of our vessel. We have a 70-foot research vessel, and we have an aluminum shield that we built on the back of the vessel, and it's on a hinge, and we can lower it down like that. So when the propellers spin, the energies from the propeller hits the you know, the deflector and causes the energy to go straight down. And that way we, with our anchor system and all, when we have a target, you know, we can very gently blow the sand away into the water column because the tide goes to the east and the north to the south. And very gently, it's like putting a penny on a snowbank in January. You know, where is it in April or May? It's on the sidewalk. That's the same with what happens on the Cape. Anything that goes on the sand eventually migrates its way down to this layer of Pleistocene glacial till. And you have this, when you blow the sand away, you get down to this layer where you'll find a very, very fine layer of white sand, just like hourglass sand. And underneath that, there's a layer of black sand. And on top of that black sand is you'll find all the coins and all the gold. And then underneath that, there's, you know, the stones. But that's what we do. You have this, and it comes and goes. You know, the sand comes and goes. And just recently, I'm not going to talk much about it, but we recently found a very important part of the ship that's been uncovered. It's never been uncovered before in 300 years.
So Kate, to answer you, a lot of these, it's been down in the place, and then there's a storm and it covers it over in the winter. Or it will, you know, open up. So the areas that we look at are either where the sand is recently covered over an area or has recently been taken away.
So a combination of nature and propeller assist.
Yeah, there's been, I think that the nature has become the go-to kind of thing. If you have a chance to watch that video, this is a video, you will see at the beginning, this black strip. And that is looking through the water down to an area where, see that black area up there? A storm came in and for the first time cleared that down to the cobble. And that's where they went out. That's where the boat is. And they were just laying out. They're going down now. They've filmed this. You lay out an archaeological grid on the bottom. And you have to do that, not only lay out the lines, but you have to take really specific compass readings so you know what the latitude and longitude is. That gentleman is doing right there. And that day, they hadn't found one of these in 37 years. And all of a sudden that day, they found over 100.
Yeah, we found over 1,000 bracelets.
Cleared out by the latest storm.
Wow. And we left, the storm came in, we left a huge pile of bracelets and armbands. They could cover it up. So we have to go back and get it. But that's just scratching the surface. Again, the pirates robbed 53 ships. And anything of any value, the pirates valued. You know, if you were a former slave, you were a merchant sailor, they got whacked on the head and were thrown on the ship, and, you know, you're an indentured sailor. And then to escape and become a pirate, everybody got an equal share. So anything of any value that they took off of these ships, everybody's, like recently we found a bag that's concreted. We found a rum bottle, a pipe, a smoking pipe, all different kinds of coins and gold. And as I was telling my guys that are working with me, and we never really, it was a casket of East Indian jewels on board the boat. And everybody got an equal share. So what was in that bag? And when you're taking these things apart and you're putting all the stones apart and you're not looking for jewels, that's one of the things that we had to start thinking about. Wait a minute, every one of these bags probably has that pirate's share of jewels in it. So
didn't it have pistols on top as well?
It's like this thing. This thing could have, you know, there's a coin here that I saw this morning. Nobody
it didn't seem like a coin to me.
But you know, the things that we found in these concretions are incredible. You know, hundreds of coins and all kinds. The whole bottom is covered with gold dust. And again, we've never sold one thing. We've kept the entire collection together. And, you know, we're so proud to be working with Bill on what he's done here in Salem. I was blown away walking through here today because it was really a great job. And we're going to be bringing more concretions up here for, you know, for Bill to work on.
Next time you go on, I'm diving, but the mungwing is there and not Barry. Well, thank you very much, Barry. Appreciate you.
No, with the hook.
Bill,
Gotta shake hands with the hook like a
I have
pirate.
one question for you.
Sure.
Barry, I'm starstruck, so no question for you. I just deeply admire you. Bill, it's been a pleasure to welcome you to Salem, my friend.
Thank you, man.
Who's here. Was here at the ribbon cutting, learned a great deal. I'm wondering if you could just tell the community how you envision partnering with school districts to engage our kids in the programming that's happening here. You can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Manny Cruz, first I'm calling you out, Manny, new representative, former vice chair of the school committee in
Current
Salem,
vice chair.
and still vice chair, and the future of politics in Massachusetts. Watch this guy. And you know, I've introduced a lot of politicians, and sometimes, oh, this is Rep so-and-so, this is Rep so-and-so. This guy is amazing. Watch him. And to answer that question, we have in the front row Tom O'Toole and Shannon Donnelly. They are from the Essex North Agricultural and Technical School, INSAT, as we call them.
Yep.
And we are developing a partnership with them and the Salem Public School System, which we're going to integrate a program together. And we're going to do something that has never been done anywhere in the country. Dr. Scott is involved in this. I'd like, come in, Carolyn, if you could come in. This is my co-founder, Carolyn Shapiro. My wife, Kristen, is out there, but she won't, no, she's modest.
She's walking
She's walking the other way. But Carolyn has, it took a lot to build this, a lot of vision. And the school, integrating this with kids and the school system is fundamental to what we're going to do. And with the vision of Tom and Shannon and others at INSAP, we are going to take VOTEC. I've always thought, maybe 15 years ago, I was in New Bedford and I learned that there was a 70% dropout rate and a 500-person waiting list to get into VOTEC. So what does that say? We need VOTEC. We need VOTEC at a level that you could, I've only seen at INSAP. I don't know if you've ever been out there. It's more like a college campus. And you have the Salem school system that has all these experimental programs building on the diversity in this community and working out on the front lines new concepts. Well, we're going to take the Salem system and the VOTEC system, put them together, and we're, through Dr. Scott, I don't know where he is right now, oh, right back there, Scott here, we're going to create a curriculum that creates a certificate program that allows these kids to be certified as assistant conservators. Right now, Barry Clifford has in his laboratory enough concretions where five assistant conservators under the supervision of a conservator could work 24/7 in shifts around the clock for 5 years before they could get those concretions preserved. And Barry's bringing up more every year. And that's the case all around the country on these reps. So as a high school graduate, you could have a certificate. As an undergrad still, that was immediately employable. We also are going to develop interactive exhibits here using the wealth of information and resources of INSAT and the Salem Public School System. We're going to do these interactive exhibits are only as limited as the imagination of the staff and the administration and the kids.
Really,
And then what,
is the name of that Essex Agricultural and Technical Institute?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. It is amazing, and I urge you to go out. So we're just beginning that process. See these bags over here? These are concretions that have been taken off of this. And what we're going to do is take these bags and take one of them, take them over to INSAT, and under the supervision of Dr. Scott, they are going to do DNA analysis. These are high school kids in VOTEC, and they have the capability to do it right there now. And they're going to find out secrets to climate change. What has happened over 300 years? And also, what's in there? Animal, vegetable, mineral, or human beings? So we have this huge potential. And is Dr. Schreich here? Dr. Stephen, he was held up in a meeting, but the superintendent of public schools was also going to be here. And again, the team between the school committee members and Dr. Schreich, and now having Manny as a state rep and Senator Lovely in the Senate, we have an enormous capability here to do something never been done before anywhere in the country, create that model, that prototype, and then go from there. So I want to introduce Carolyn, who, just for a moment, Carolyn, come here, Carolyn. So Carolyn came to this as, I'll tell a little bit of background. This is the quality of people we have here. Carolyn was an executive of American Express, and she was a young woman and hit the glass ceiling at a very early age. And what these old bots did, excuse my language. They looked over and they said, oh, we have to do something with Carolyn, the superstar. We have to give her a position. Let's make her head of the traveler's check division, which was going down faster than the Titanic, right? And then we'll see how women perform at high levels under pressure. Carolyn turned that into the gift card business. Billions of dollars worth of gift card business, and retired 15 years ago, 10 years ago or something, and has been involved with Barry for many years and has been our partner in doing this. And Carolyn?
Yes, and I have to say that this is such a privilege for me to participate in for a couple of reasons. First of which is I am a native of Massachusetts. It's important for me to see businesses and people in Massachusetts succeed. So that's a very important part of this for me personally. The other reason is because we have such wonderful partners, many of whom are in this room, some of whom have already spoken, that help us every day on the job here to be more successful and to tell the story the way it would need to be told. And the third reason really is most important, and that is that the mission of the museum here is to inspire the bold explorer in all of us. And that's really what we're here to do. When little kids come in here and they see these concretions and their eyes light up, when you go to a senior citizen's home and you present the story of Maria Hallett and Sam Bellamy, and you see their eyes light up, you realize you're telling a very important story. And as was said earlier, the real treasure here is the story. So I hope that you'll enjoy the next segment here. We do have some refreshments for you guys after the presentation. And I think we're ready to go into the next round.
Chris, just stepped off just for a moment.
Okay,
so
great.
Just to follow up on this program, we are going out now into the schools and making presentations in the schools. What Carolyn has come up with is a brilliant story. You always think inside the box, right? We have this 8,300 square feet of space. We've got this beautiful exhibit. And Carolyn has said, no, let's think out of the box. Let's think what we can do to take what we have here and bring it into the general community. Again, as in response to Manny's question. And we're in that process, reaching out from everything to senior centers, to boys and girls clubs, to rec centers, to camps, in the schools themselves, and we'll be doing more of that. The next guest is a very special individual. Christoph Wald, has reached the pinnacle of his career in radiology. I said, Chris, can you come and do something very special with us? We have this artifact. We need to figure out what's in it. And it's very difficult to get these things x-rayed or CAT scanned. Chris, with whoever, the two people that did this, are there his assistants? Could you stand up? And these two people showed up at 5:30 in the morning to help us, right, get this done. And Chris orchestrated this effort. And he's here tonight on his way to Austria, right, having just come from, where were you before that, Chris? Bermuda. He is the top of his game. He's requested all these different places. But he has decided that this is special enough that he would give his individual attention to. He has a long history of doing this. He actually discovered, he did an x-ray of a half model that was lying around in somebody's basement. It was painted over and everything, and proved it was the half model used for America, the original America in the America's Cup. So he's done a lot of things. We're very privileged, Chris, to have you with us. Perhaps you can show everybody what this looks like under an x-ray machine or under the CAT scan machine.
All right, so thank you very much, Bill. It's a privilege to be here for this important moment. So my name is Chris Wald. I'm a radiologist, so I'm a doctor that looks at medical images. And my two colleagues that helped do this project, Jill Cavallo and Rob Marquis. So they actually work at the Lake Peabody site. Let me take you through what we did. I got this phone call last quarter of last year by Bill saying that, oh, a friend of us called me and said that you x-ray things every now and then that are not people. I said, yes, under special circumstances we do that. So I said, I have this incrustation, this artifact, and we'd love to know what's in it, and would it be possible to take a look at that with X-ray machines? And we said, yeah, sure, we can arrange that. So anyway, let me take you through it. I hope this is big enough to see. This is what we have to work with. Just to keep it very contemporary, 2 days ago, I put into OpenAI's large language model, DALL-E 2, paint me a radiologist X-raying a pirate artifact. So this is what the artificial intelligence came up with, just for kicks. But
there's a resemblance there, Chris, I think.
Well, I know. He's dead, I'm almost dead. So anyway, just for kicks. So literally on December 18, 2022, very, very early in the morning, the reason being that we had to do all of this under cover of night and before any patients would be there. This van pulls up in the emergency room parking lot at Peabody, and these three heavily wrapped gentlemen wheel an object through our walls, through our hallways. And I can tell you, I'm glad we did this before any patients were there, because they would have been pretty disturbed by the sight. So here's the encrustation, which is this object here, which you can take a closer look at. This is what the whole thing looks like. I've stitched together 4 visible light images here, give you a full impression, and again, you can take a look at the real thing here. This is before anyone chipped away on it. So you can see that this is an object that's encrusted with stones and seashells, all the things you've already heard about. So the quest was to take a peek inside, because before anyone would sort of chip away at this thing, so they can see Rob and Jill and others positioning the patient on our CAT scanner. So we were going to do a CAT scan first, and then we were going to do plain film radiography of the object. There the patient is going into the CAT scanner, getting her comfortable, and now it's showtime. So we did a CT scan, which is what we would normally do, is when you come to the emergency room with belly pain or you've got a broken leg, we put you in the same machine. So this is what we did. Now when you take CT images, the way that what that does is it slices the object electronically as if you were slicing a loaf of bread. And we're actually looking, if this was a patient, we would look at the patient from the feet up as they go into the tube. So this is a movie. I was thinking about how I can show you these images. Let's see whether this thing runs. This is essentially a movie of the object. And we're basically scanning through the object. This is how the CAT scanner sees it. Obviously a little bit hard to imagine, but you can see the bright spot on one end of the image. That's metal on CT. It's really bright. And the stones are sort of gray, but you would agree that this is not very easy to understand what's in there, although you get some idea. So we knew immediately when we saw these images flash by on the screen that this had to be a long object that had metal in it. And then it shape changes, and you see that here as well. Now, what you can do is, in a CAT scanner, is you can actually put all these images together into one object. And so we did that here on the post-processing workstation, and you can then rotate this any which way you want. Let's see whether that runs or not. Yep, it does. Obviously this rotates very fast, but it can also do this slower. And can sort of, now you can start to look at the object from all sides. Now remember, when we did this CAT scan, nobody knew what was inside this rock here. And you can begin to see maybe the suggestion that this is a long tube. It's made from metal, and maybe this looks like the butt of a musket. You can kind of see the stock here. You can rotate this in any which way you want once you have the electronic images in the box. So you can also tumble this. This is just, we would do this live on a workstation when we investigate these images. I just make movies so that you would get some idea that this is a 3D object that we can actually investigate. When we go to the next slide. And this is a movie that takes you through the object. Now the object is going from left to right. So we're slowly stepping through the object, and you can see that's the back of the object. Now the gun is coming into sight as we move through. The gray stuff around it is the stone, it's the incrustation. There's the back of what looks like a musket or something like that, a gun. And then we've got some bright stuff next to the back of the gun, which are either I don't know what you call them, the balls that you shoot with the gun, and the mechanism to fire the gun. So here are some more 3D reconstructions of it. Once you study this carefully, you can see things like there's a little hole in this structure here, which sits around here. That's probably where this is a very long object, where they put that on a stock, because you would not be able to hold this thing up. So you'd have to rest it on something. So there's a mechanism here where you can stick something, like a stick inside, and rest it on there. Here's a more detailed view. And then we took this over to another table where we typically do x-rays of extremities of people. And here you can see another colleague of ours positioning the object on the x-ray table. And these images are not 3D objects, they're 2D images, but you can actually see quite well what's inside the concretion. So we really turned up the juice on the x-ray tube, and you can see pretty well what this is. So this is looking through all these stones here and actually seeing inside the object. You can see why that might be useful for an archaeologist to know what to expect, how to work on the object, where to begin the work, and also to understand that, for instance, I think Scott will get into this, why it's important to know that the whole thing is metal and in one piece. So that's really it. So this is what we saw in the morning, and Bill and others got very excited about what they saw.
No, it was terrific. It was really kind of a humorous moment because we are all there, Dr. Scott, myself, and one of our workers, Jason, was there, and we were getting poured on. And we got it inside, and we took the cloth off as we were coming back from the x-ray machine. And Dr. Wall, no, cover it up. Somebody's going to think that's a body lying out there. And rather than create a horror show there, we did cover it up and we got it out and before anybody else arrived. But it's this kind of adventurism that links, Biff to Barry and Barry to me.
Curiosity.
It's a curiosity, and Carolyn and Kristen and our staff here. Come on out here just for a moment. Nothing happens without people that work here. Stan and Sophia and Stephanie's around here somewhere with Stephanie. Stephanie's way in the back. But Stan is the guy that makes everything work here, and there's a lot of stuff to make sure it keeps working. Sophia just joined us. She's a student. We have other students. We have a student from Salem State. Sophia is from UMass. Stephanie has worked on tours and has lots of experience in terms of working with various museums and all that. That's what makes it possible for Carolyn and myself and my wife, who still won't come out, Kristen. If you look at all the tableaus here, National Geographic put together these tableaus, but it was my wife that brought them to life. And you can't, the little details of all these things that go together to really have an experience for people, and we couldn't make it happen without our staff. So big hand of applause for our staff. So our last presenter, and we leave the best for last, right? Dr. Scott, will you come up here? It's actually Dr. Scott Herbert, and Scott is a very modest guy. He is a guy that has credentials that really don't exist out there. He has experience, a depth of experience and breadth of experience that makes all of this possible. He's been with Barry forever.
Yeah, 06.
Since
06.
07. You see, if you watch this, the guy in the green sweatshirt taking out this huge concretion and making sure nobody's dropping it or breaking it is Scott way back then.
And I'm still fat, so it hasn't changed.
But Scott fit us in between international work he's doing in Cartagena or
Down in outside of Bogota, Colombia.
outside of Bogota. He's been there with reps all over the country, and he brings the skill that's necessary. You go through this museum, see these. You know, I can't find matching cufflinks in my top drawer of my bureau in my bedroom. Between Barry finding them and Scott bringing them to life, 2 rose gold cufflinks that big, they were underwater for 300 years and now are brilliant again. The work that goes on bringing these other concretions and preserving them, the cloth, the ribbon you'll see out there, the parts bag for a pistol, they've survived 300 years, but they've been preserved by the skills, experience, and knowledge of Dr. Scott Herbert. So Dr. Scott is going to talk a little bit about what happened after we went to, but maybe a little bit before too, what happened at the Leahy Medical Center, how he has used that information, and what he has just begun today to do with this artifact. So Scott.
Hi everybody, Dr. Scott Herbert. I'm just going to give you a brief overview, and then actually I'm going to open it up for questions, because people always ask me questions about conservation. I never know where to start on it. I could go on for hours and be like this, and then I don't know if I'm bored here or not. So anyways, but I was actually super happy about being able to get these x-rays and the CAT scans, because actually it's a great diagnostic tool for me. It makes it a lot easier for when I'm looking at an artifact on how to target my area. As you can see, I was working on it today, so a little messy. But so anyway, so I targeted which would be to your left, if you're looking at it, to be my right, to look into it to see what we were looking at. And as I worked through it, I did actually dig this area out, and we did pull out a musket ball. Those are 2 musket balls, turned out. At first, we thought they were pins, but you can't, I mean, you have an idea, but you can't actually tell until you start digging into it. So, and that is actually wood. And it was really cool on the x-ray because you can see the striations. I mean, I want to go move into their office over there and just hang out there indefinitely, because the equipment they have is a lot of fun. So, and then when I started opening it up, sure enough, it's wood. So it's starting to match up, and that looks like the long barrel that's there. So it's diagnostic. So going into the artifact itself, understanding where I need to go and what I need to look at, coupled with the technology that's there now, makes it a lot easier. Now, this is the crazy part. We forget many times about our history. And when I first started doing this stuff, it was like, okay, well, let's start here and hope for the best, is how it was. Because I remember when you see this video here with that x-ray machine, that was actually when the digital plates just came on the market. So this was about 06, those in the industry, about 06, 07, the digital plates were like the newest thing in the world. So when we had to do x-rays, we had to do it the old-fashioned way. X-ray, and you'd have to run your film, and then you'd have all this toxic waste and all that kind of stuff, and that gets expensive. So in the conservation world, literally, it was just like, okay, let's just get started and see what we come up with, and just take your time and go through it. But the diagnostic tools are great. So I'm hoping to get through it. So what the plan is right now for this piece, because now that I've been able to open it up, you'd think that I'd go through and go ahead and just take the rest of it out. No, I'm actually going to put it into electrolysis the next couple days and let the chemistry do its job. Because there is always a risk when you're removing concretion that when you're taking it off, and especially if it's really hardened on the artifact, it can strip material from the artifact itself. So you want to kind of bring it down, and you only want to work far enough to get something exposed that then you can get it into, at least for metals, get them on electrolysis. And then what will happen is that as the electrolytical solution is working, it'll start reconstituting the iron back to itself and release itself from the concretion. And as releasing from the concretion makes my life easier. I can come back in 6 months, or depending, we'll talk about that in a second. Depending on the material and the length, it's a lot. I'll give you a quick rundown on that. But and then it's easier for me to remove the concretion without damaging it, and then get back into the work. And then eventually I'll have to separate the wood from the metal, and then work on them completely separate, because they have totally different things. So one of the things people always ask me is, oh, well, how long does it take for, let's say, iron? Well, it depends. For instance, a cannon will sit in electrolysis between 4 to 7 years before you can work on it. Right. So it depends on the heaviness of this. Smaller metals right now, I'm working on a gun parts bag I have back in my laboratory. And there's a lot of little pieces. And I've had it under electrolysis now for about 3 months. And that's just to get it to loosen up. Then each individual piece will be separated out and then they'll go through electrolysis. And then it's a whole process to determine when it stops. You have to, it's not complicated, but you can measure it by, like I like to use sodium hydroxide, for instance. And sodium hydroxide, in the old days, they used to use lye and all kinds of stuff. But the sodium hydroxide, the nice part about that is when you run out, it goes to neutral because it's a basic. So when you use it and it pulls off the chlorine ion, it attaches to the sodium ion and does its thing. When the solution runs out, it goes to neutral. So you're not causing acidic environment and destroying your artifact, right? So when it goes to neutral, you keep doing that. And then eventually when it no longer goes to neutral and it stays in the basic, you know that artifact is done with its process. So that's one way of doing it. And then there's other ways of doing it, but that's kind of an easy way to do it. And then you go through a whole other stabilization and on and on and on. So anyway, so it all depends, like I said, just in iron alone. And then materials themselves. My favorite actually to conserve is gold because it's the best. Not because it's so awesome. It's like literally take it out, done. Boop. Silver takes 3 days. You know, brass, bronze, depends if it's got brass or bronze disease. Wood, depending on it, you know, you know, there's no set answer. It's like, and like silver, that's kind of interesting. With silver, there was, I didn't get a chance to do this. We pulled some up from down in Florida on a project I was working on, and it went down to the state of Florida. Jamie Levy did that one at the time. He got his hands on it before I could. And it was these beautiful silver platters. Those had to be done on a bed of zinc instead of doing electrolysis, because if the metals are too thin, you have to do chemical, straight chemical, and not electrolysis. And this is the interesting part. If you put too many amps on your iron, you can actually shatter it. Like you can shatter a cannon if you put too much amperage on it. So you have to monitor that the whole time. So that's kind of like a brief rundown in how conservation works. But if you got questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them. And if you can think of any questions right now, or if you think of them later, I'll be wandering around grazing with the rest of you guys. That'd be good.
One of the things that is very important that I got out of tonight, talking with children, you know, it's important if we can reach another person to become a barrier. But, you know, when you think about children today, everybody says, oh, you know, the kids today, they just, they're not the same as when I grew up. Well, you know what? They are the same. And the people that have changed is us. Oh, there's a slight little budget crunch. Well, shut off the lights of basketball, and then they don't play basketball at night. Oh, well, do away with the band at the high school. And we keep taking because of budget constraints. And yet, every child that I've ever met has the same curiosity that I had.
Yeah.
So,
well, the one thing that that has been pushed that's really strong that we need to really keep going with. I know they use the acronym STEM.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a reason for that. I mean, STEM is a great acronym, but in the same sense is that the thing with kids like that, one thing you never do is suppress their curiosity, ever. And then encourage them into different areas of sciences, right. And bring back didactic learning.
Yeah.
Because little kids, I mean, you can talk to them all day long, and their attention span, I don't have kids, but I've worked with them, and I know their attention span is about like 30 seconds. But if they got their hands in it, then you can keep them there for hours and stuff. So with kids and learning and things like that, if you can ingratiate them and bring them into it, it would be better. That's the way I look at it.
Well, it's great to have you guys here, I can tell you that.
And does anybody else have questions about conservation?
Scott,
you can come catch me later.
I want just one little vignette with Scott. So, you know, Scott, all of this is really, really important stuff. You almost feel, you know, it's such a huge responsibility to have custody of these. And when we licensed our treasure, the coins from Barry, we flew Scott up from Florida. Scott arrives with this magnifying camera like this. Every one of the coins you see in that chest has a little dot on the other side of it connected to a database. That dot, and I didn't know this, archaeologists 40 years ago used to hand draw everything they have. So we have thousands and thousands of coins and artifacts that were hand drawn on both sides to show every scratch, every nick, so you knew the identity of that coin. Then when iPhones came, better cameras, they took pictures of both sides. Well, we took custody of over 500 coins. Flew him up. He has this magnifying camera, and Scott looked at every single coin back and front, looked at the data on that coin to make sure it was the right coin for that data number. Then had to do a certificate of condition on each side of each, write up a new certificate of condition, because we're required to give those coins back at some point to put them back in this collection. And when we do, we have to make sure they're in the same condition that they are now, or when we receive them. We have a hydrometer in every case that has a tolerance for humidity and temperature. That's connected to an alarm. Several weeks ago, that alarm went off at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they called me. But that is how serious this is taken. And in that data set, it not only has the picture of the coin, but it has the date it was found, the time it was found, the latitude and longitude where it was found, the diver that found it, and the conservator that originally identified it, and the identity of what that coin is or was.
Well, on a side note, I was going to tell you, when Bill told me it was 500 coins, I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, that's not that bad. I'm like, no, because the exhibit, with the bigger exhibit I had to travel with the whole thing, 2,500 coins. And I had to count every single one, and I had to catalog every single one as they came out of the case. This is how it works. This is the fun part. Okay, so you get them, they come in, you got to catalog all of them. Then you have to recount them before you put them in the case and make sure everything's there. Then when the exhibit's over, I have to go into the case. I'd shut down the whole gallery when I do this, because I had, for security reasons, I'd have to count them all coming out, right? Then I'd have to repackage them. Then I'd have to recount them before I put them into the shipping container, ship them to the new venue, go back, recount them coming back out. And yeah, 2,500 of them. It would take me about 2 days.
This is why.
That's how much data I have to stay on top of it. So it's not just conservation, it's also record keeping. Extensive record keeping. And one of the key things in the record keeping is this, is that if something happens to me, another conservator has to be able to come, and this is a scientific process, if another conservator has to come up behind me and has to be able to read and figure out exactly what I did so that they can pick up where I left off and continue on the process. And if anything goes south, they can look at what I've done and see if there was an error or a mistake or anything like that. So yeah, that's the other part, conservation, a lot of record keeping.
Barry Clifford doesn't want to be called a treasure hunter. He's not. He's an underwater explorer who preserves for posterity all of this, just like any academic institution would be or any nonprofit. And he can do that.
Treasure hunters sell their stuff. That's a big thing. He may be private industry, but he doesn't sell any of it. He's kept it all, which is a very big rarity, and actually it's a great advantage for scientists and archaeologists because they can come look at the material at any time. It's very rare you'll find a shipwreck done by a private group like that and being held together. The rest of them will break it up and sell it.
Yeah, it ends up in private collections where nobody ever sees it.
Yeah, you'll never see that stuff.
So anyway, you've been great. Are there any questions for any of our, Barry had to leave. He was on his way to Maine and came here early because he was going over with Dr. Scott about 2 hours before this began, just all kinds of stuff. But Dr. Wall is here, Dr. Scott is here, Carolyn is here, I'm here, my staff. If you have any questions, do you have any questions now? Okay, no questions now. We have food and drink in there.
Thank you.
We'll